There are people in this world right now who would behead you and see it as a fulfillment of their life's purpose, to purge the world of unclean sinners for the glory of God. There are people in this world right now whose hearts well up with authentic joy at the thought of dying in a jihad against you. Now, if I wanted these violent extremist jihadists to win, here's what I'd do. First, I'd promote the idea of moral and cultural relativism to ensure that all belief systems are equally respected.
Ideas need to be changed.
You're saying their ideas are bad?
Killing women for being raped, I would say, is a bad idea.
I'd pretend that beliefs don't matter, they don't inform our actions at all. I'd ignore the fact that some systems of belief lead to more harm than others. And I'd do this by ignoring the actual content of cultural critics. And instead, I'd call these critics names like bigot, xenophobe, racist to marginalize their voice, make them not want to speak up. If I wanted violent Islamic jihadist terrorists to win, I'd find out where they live, and then I'd give them weapons. I'd train them how to fight, teach them how to devastate a nation-state's economy through asymmetric warfare. If I wanted terrorists to win, I'd find the area of the world where barbarians with the most violent ideologies live, and then I'd create a power vacuum by destroying the governments and dictators, keeping them in check. If I wanted terrorists to win, I'd become their biggest recruiting tool. I'd invade a nation near them and destroy infrastructure, leave citizens without roads, electricity, clean water, food. I'd contaminate their environment with depleted uranium to ensure generations of birth defects. I'd make sure that 90% of the victims of my military action were innocent civilians, women and children, so that for every one enemy I killed, I created at least 10 more enemy motivated by hopelessness, hatred, and despair. If I wanted terrorists to win, I would create a large welfare state to attract a new kind of immigrant, one who is happy to receive handouts. And then I'd incentivize them to remain in ghettoized cultural enclaves where they can become cut off from our society and become progressively disenfranchised and susceptible to radicalization. I'd want to do everything to discourage these immigrants from having to learn the skills, language, and cultural ideals that will help them flourish in the capitalist marketplace of a liberal democracy, help them get a job, help them build a better life. If I wanted terrorism to win, I'd keep people in high-risk areas of the world away from free trade and markets. See, I wouldn't want them incentivized to virtue. And I'd remind people of the lie that war creates peace. I'd diminish the fact that free trade for mutual benefit has been the biggest creator of peace the world has ever seen. I'd try and hide the fact that markets incentivize virtue and punish extremism. If I wanted terrorists to win, I'd promote hate against peaceful, moderate Muslims. I'd call them names, tell them to get out of my country, abuse them. I'd do everything possible to drive them into the arms of sympathetic Islamic extremists who would offer them sympathy and warmth, an abundant afterlife, and most importantly, a way to strike back against their oppressors. If I wanted terrorists to win, I'd make sure politicians have absolutely no skin in the game and never have to personally serve in a war they vote for, never have to personally pay for it. I'd simultaneously ensure a steady stream of willing soldiers by tapping into the most noble fiber in a young man's soul to protect his tribe. Once I had corrupted this noble instinct by making him believe that obedience to government orders is protecting his tribe, why then I'd start glorifying sacrifice through memorial ceremonies, giving medals, media, through movies and pop culture. See, I'd want to ensure that brave young men know that their highest value as a human being isn't in living for family, community, and themselves, but in dying so politicians can get votes. A system that incentivizes young men dying and old men lying ensures we can feed this perpetual military action necessary to drive up recruitment and creation of terrorists. If I wanted terrorists to win, I would want a highly centralized defense model with a single point of extremely vulnerable failure. See, I would not want citizens to view national defense as their own civic duty. I'd ensure they were disarmed and useless at protecting themselves. I'd make them completely helpless and dependent on the government to protect them. I'd want terrorists to be able to take their time as they pick us off, like fish in a barrel, while we wait for government enforcers to come protect us. If I wanted terrorists to win, I'd make people think that neocons and progressives were ideological enemies, instead of two sides of the exact same violent collectivist coin. On one side you have progressives who want to use state violence inside our borders. On the other side, neocons who want to use state violence outside our borders. I'd ignore the fact that violence only ever works if it's used protectively, and it never works in the way that neocons and progressives want to use it. If I wanted terrorists to win, I'd extort money from my own citizens to fund the military-industrial complex. I'd control the money supply so that my people were in bondage the minute they're born, easier to control them that way. And I'd do my best to distract citizens from noticing the major role that forced central banking plays in promoting and funding warfare. If I wanted terrorists to win, I'd make the population a braying herd of sheep distracted by materialism, flag worship, their favorite sports team, the next Star Wars movie. I'd keep them singing hymns to the state, anything to prevent them from thinking or noticing that they are individuals who are powerful beyond measure and that their lives could mean something. I'd do everything possible to prevent them from noticing that they have become tax livestock. If I wanted terrorism to win, I'd make sure my citizens viewed themselves as helpless victims. I'd do this by coddling them from cradle to the grave. I'd ensure the state became a surrogate husband to women and a surrogate parent to children. I'd hand out medals for participation instead of achievement. I'd make sure people never believe themselves responsible for their own circumstances or even their own feelings. I'd make them think they are perpetual victims of forces that are outside of their control. And I'd get these victims in a perpetual state of learned helplessness by teaching them that it's the rich, the more fortunate, the more productive, the more able-bodied, the more beautiful, that are the source of their unhappiness and their helplessness. And if these others would just check their privilege, then maybe, just maybe, we wouldn't be so unhappy. I'd make cutting a fellow citizen down pay off more than building themselves up. I'd also make them feel that government is the answer to all their anxieties. Feeling anxious about the climate? Here, have some government. Worried about terrorists? Here, have some government. You aren't responsible for managing your own fears, see? That's what government's for. Anyways, these are all things that I'd do to ensure a never-ending stream of terrorists and give them the best chance of success. Maybe by reverse engineering how we got here, we can turn things around. So if you can think of any other ways to help the terrorists, please let me know in the comments below. Maybe by knowing the ways we can help them, we can figure out ways to not help them.